The metal floor of the Galactic Assembly Hall shook when the massive fist came down. Velthos' iron scale stood at his full height of 8 feet, his dark scales catching the light like polished weapons. Around the circular chamber, representatives from 40 different species watched in tense silence. The peaceful trade summit had just turned into something far more dangerous. "Enough words!" Velthos growled, his voice like grinding stone. "The Krathari Empire will not accept your human tricks and delays. You claim the Theta Corridor belongs to your expansion zone. We have held those stars for 3 generations. This dispute ends now. The old way." Ambassador Hana stood across from him, her diplomatic robes suddenly feeling very thin. She had prepared for difficult negotiations. She had not prepared for this. Behind her, military advisor G1 whispered urgent calculations about fleet positions and evacuation routes. Neither option was good. "Commander Velthos," Hana said, keeping her voice steady. "Surely we can find a reasonable compromise. Our surveys show the corridor has resources enough for both our peoples. War benefits no one." The Krathari commander's laugh was harsh. "War? No. Ambassador, war is what happens when honor fails. I offer you something cleaner. The right of blood challenge, single combat between champions. Winner takes the disputed territory. Loser accepts the verdict, with honor intact." A murmur ran through the assembly. Species from across the galaxy knew of the Krathari trials. For 3,000 years, the warrior race had settled their disputes this way. For 3,000 years, no one had defeated a Krathari champion. Their warriors were bred for combat from birth, trained in techniques perfected over millennia. Their very biology was armor. Those scales could turn blades and deflect energy weapons at low settings. Hana felt her chest tighten. She knew Earth's greatest soldiers. She had reviewed their files during the flight to Meridian Prime. Not one of them could last a minute against a Krathari warrior. It would not be combat. It would be execution. "And if we refuse this challenge?" she asked, though she already knew the answer. "Then you admit you have no right to the territory. You withdraw all claims. And the galaxy knows humanity speaks with no honor." Velthos leaned forward, his claws clicking against the table. "Choose, Ambassador. Send a champion. Or bend the knee." In the observation section, away from the main diplomatic floor, Day 1 sat with the junior staff and cultural attachés. He was not supposed to be here at all. His job was simple: catalog the cultural artifacts of species humanity encountered, maintain the archive of first contact protocols, and stay quiet during actual negotiations. He wore plain gray robes marked with the symbol of Earth's Grand Archive. At 32, he had the build of someone who spent his life with books rather than weapons. Average height, lean, with tired eyes from too many late nights reading, but those tired eyes were locked on Velthos' iron scale with complete focus. Day 1 had spent 15 years studying warrior cultures. Not because he wanted to fight, but because he wanted to understand. His grandmother Mei Ri had been a historian of ancient martial arts, one of the last people who remembered the old fighting styles before they were forgotten. She had taught him to see patterns, to understand that every punch and kick told a story about the people who created it. He had never expected that knowledge to matter. Archival work was peaceful, safe, boring, some said. Day 1 had always liked boring, but now he watched the Krathari commander, and his mind was moving very fast. "We need time to consider," Hana was saying on the floor below. "You have 1 minute," Velthos replied. "Then I consider your silence as refusal." Hana turned to her staff, her face pale. G1 was already shaking his head. "We cannot win this. Our best combat specialists are 2 weeks away. Even if we called them now, they would not be enough. I have seen Krathari training footage. Ambassador, we have to refuse. Refuse and lose the corridor anyway," Hana said bitterly. "Refuse and look weak to every other species watching." How many territorial disputes do we have pending? 6? 8? If we back down here, they will all demand more. Better than sending someone to die in an arena. Around them, the other human staff members were silent. No one had a good answer. This was not supposed to happen. First contact protocols had dozens of scenarios planned out. Trial by combat was not among them. Day one stood up. The movement was quiet, but in the tense silence, several heads turned. Subin, his fellow archivist, grabbed his sleeve. Day one. What are you doing? He did not answer. He was already walking down the steps toward the diplomatic floor. His heart was beating very fast, but his breathing stayed calm. Grandmother Mayri had taught him breathing exercises from ancient meditation practices. The mind panics, she had said. The body follows. Control the breath, and you control both. He reached the barrier separating observers from diplomats. A security guard moved to stop him, but Ambassador Hana turned at the commotion. Her eyes widened when she saw him approaching. Day one. This is not the time. I will be humanity's champion, he said. The words fell into the chamber like stones into still water. For a moment, no one reacted. Then the sound started. First a chuckle from one of the Krathari delegation. Then another. Within seconds, harsh laughter echoed from the warrior species section. Velthos stared at him with something like disbelief. This is what humanity offers? A clerk? I am an archivist, Day One said calmly. And I accept your challenge. Hana grabbed his arm, pulling him aside. Have you lost your mind? She hissed. Do you have any idea what you just volunteered for? They will kill you. Literally tear you apart. Possibly, Day One agreed. But you were going to refuse anyway. At least this way, humanity does not look like cowards. G1 pushed forward. This is insane. Ambassador, we cannot allow this. But Day One was still looking at the Krathari commander. Velthos had stopped laughing. His eyes narrowed, studying this strange human who showed no fear, or who was very good at hiding it. You understand the terms? Velthos asked. Combat continues until death, surrender, or inability to continue. No weapons, no armor, no mercy. Our champion will be War Master Krenzar the Undefeated. He has won 200 trials. He has never been wounded. When you die in that arena, your species accepts the loss with honor. These are the terms. I understand, Day One said. Day One, please, Hana said quietly. You do not have to do this. He finally looked at her, and there was something in his eyes she had not expected. Not bravery exactly, but certainty. Like a mathematician who had just solved a very difficult equation. Ambassador, I need access to the station's complete historical database. Every file on Krathari combat trials. All footage, all records, everything available. What? Why? Because I have 24 hours to study for the most important exam of my life. He looked back at Velthos. When does the trial begin? The Krathari commander showed his teeth. It was not quite a smile. Tomorrow, this time. The combat sphere will be prepared. Die well, little human. At least you have courage. The session ended shortly after. As the delegations dispersed, Subin caught up with Day One in the corridor outside. Her face was a mix of worry and confusion. Tell me you have a plan, she said. Please tell me you are not just committing suicide in a creative way. Day One was already walking toward the archive access terminals. I have the beginning of a plan. Whether it works depends on what I find in the next 24 hours. Day One. You study dead civilizations and old fighting styles. The Krathari are alive, and very, very good at killing. He stopped at a terminal and began entering his access codes. Every fighting style tells a story, Subin. The Krathari have been telling the same story for 3,000 years. I need to read that story. All of it. Then maybe, just maybe, I can write a different ending. The screen flickered to life, showing the archive's main menu. Daewon's fingers moved across the interface with practiced speed. Get me coffee, he said quietly. A lot of it. This is going to be a very long night. Behind him, through the windows of the station, stars glittered in the darkness. Somewhere out there, War Master Krenzar was preparing to kill him. And Daewon had exactly 1 day to figure out how to survive. The archive room was cold and quiet. Daewon sat in front of 6 screens, all of them playing different videos at the same time. His eyes moved between them in a pattern that looked random, but was not. This was how he worked. This was how he had always worked. Subin returned with the coffee after midnight. She found him exactly where she had left him 3 hours earlier, still watching, still silent. The only difference was the number on the corner of his main screen. He had reviewed 147 Krathari combat trials. Have you moved at all? She asked, setting down the cup. Twice. Bathroom. His eyes did not leave the screens. Did you bring the analysis tools? Yes, but Daewon, you need to rest. Your body needs sleep before. I can sleep when I am dead. Which will be tomorrow, unless I finish this. He paused one video, rewound it, played it again. There. Did you see that? Subin looked at the screen. It showed a Krathari warrior fighting something that looked like a giant insect with blade arms. The fight lasted 8 seconds. I see a very fast execution. Watch the footwork. 3rd and 4th step. He shifts weight to his left leg before the overhead strike. Every time. It is not just this warrior. I have seen it in 90% of the fights. Daewon made a note on his tablet. It is part of their training. A fundamental technique. And that helps you how? Every fundamental technique is a foundation. Strong, reliable, predictable. He pulled up another video. Foundations are also limitations. If I know the foundation, I can predict what comes next. Subin sat down next to him, watching his profile in the blue light of the screens. They had worked together for 5 years. She had never seen him like this. Daewon was usually calm to the point of being boring. Right now, there was an intensity to him that was almost frightening. Tell me about your grandmother, she said quietly. He blinked, surprised. Mary? Why? Because you are about to die, and I want to understand why you think you will not. Daewon was quiet for a moment. Then he stopped all the videos and turned to face her. Grandmother Mary raised me. My parents died when I was young. She was a historian, like us. But she specialized in martial arts. Not the sport versions. The old styles. The ones that were created for actual combat, before modern weapons made them obsolete. And she taught you to fight? No. She taught me to remember. He smiled slightly. I was not a strong child. Skinny. Sick, often. She said, I would never be a warrior. But I could be something better. I could be a keeper of knowledge. She taught me meditation, breathing, focus. And she showed me that every martial art was really a philosophy in motion. You could understand a culture by understanding how they fought. That still does not explain tomorrow. Daewon turned back to the screens and started them again. When I was 15, Grandmother Mary showed me something interesting. She had footage of 50 different martial arts masters, each demonstrating their style. She played them all at once, just like this, and asked me what I saw. And, at first, chaos. 50 different styles, all unique. But then I started seeing connections. A kick from Taekwondo was similar to a kick from Savate. A throw from Judo echoed a technique in Shui Jiao. The same movements, developed independently on different continents. Because the human body only moves in certain ways. Physics is universal. Subin began to understand. The Krathari body is different, but physics is still physics. Leverage is leverage. Momentum is momentum. He pointed at a screen showing a Krathari warrior executing a spinning strike. They are bigger, stronger, better armored. But they are not magical. They move, they balance, they commit to attacks. And if I can see the pattern, I can predict the movement. The door opened. Ambassador Hana entered, followed by G1. Both looked exhausted. Hana's diplomatic composure was cracking around the edges. "We need to talk," she said. "I am busy." "Day 1, please. Look at me." He sighed and paused the videos again. "I spoke with Earth Command. They are sending specialists, but they will not arrive in time. I also spoke with Velthos Ironscale privately. He will accept a delay of 3 days if we request it. No. Listen to me. 3 days gives you time to train properly. 2. Ambassador, with respect, 3 days changes nothing. I cannot become a better fighter than a Krathari in 3 days. I cannot become a better fighter than a Krathari in 3 years. That is not how I win this." G1 stepped forward. "Then how do you win?" "Because from where I am standing, you are committing suicide and taking humanity's reputation with you." Day 1 looked at the military advisor for a long moment. Then he stood and walked to a clear section of the floor. "Subin, play recording 17, the one with War Master Krenzar." The screen changed to show a massive Krathari warrior, even bigger than Velthos. The opponent was some kind of 4-armed species, skilled and fast. The fight lasted 12 seconds. "Watch Krenzar's opening," Day 1 said. They watched. The Krathari moved with incredible speed, crossing the distance in 2 steps and executing an overhead claw strike that split the opponent's guard and nearly cut them in half. "Terrifying," Hana said quietly. "Now watch this one. Recording 42. Different warrior, different opponent, different location." The screen changed. Another Krathari, another fight. The opening was identical. 2 steps. Overhead claw strike. And this one, recording 91. Same opening. Recording 123. Same opening. I have watched 200 trials now. And rather, 73. 73. Every single Krathari warrior uses the exact same opening technique. G1 frowned. They teach a standardized form. That is good military practice. It is also a weakness. Day 1 moved through the space, slow and careful. "If I know the opening, I know where he will be. I know where his weight will shift, where his balance will commit." "For one attack," G1 said. "What about the second? The third? The 100th? I have watched 200 fights. I have cataloged 417 distinct techniques in the Krathari combat style. It sounds like a lot, but humans have developed thousands of martial arts techniques across our history. I have studied many of them. Not practiced, I admit. My actual fighting skills are poor, but I remember them. Every movement, every principle." He moved again, faster now, demonstrating. Here is the counter to his second technique, adapted from Aikido. Here is the response to his ground approach, using jujutsu principles. Here is the evasion for his spin attack. Borrowing from capoeira. He stopped, breathing slightly harder. I cannot overpower him, but maybe, if I am very lucky and very precise, I can make him defeat himself. The room was silent. Hana looked at Subin. "Is this possible? Can human martial arts really counter Krathari techniques?" Subin hesitated. Day 1 has an eidetic memory for patterns. If he says he can see the connections, I believe him. But, Ambassador, there is a difference between knowing and doing, between watching a recording and facing a warrior who is actively trying to kill you. "I know," Day 1 said quietly. He walked back to his screens and sat down. "That is why I need the full 24 hours. I need to know these patterns so deeply that my body reacts before my mind can panic. Grandmother Mayri taught me the meditation techniques. I have the knowledge. Now I need to make it instinct." G1 shook his head slowly. This is the craziest thing I have ever heard, and I have been in actual combat. Ji-won shook his head. That. Do you have a better plan? Daewon asked. No one answered. Ambassador Hana stood. Continue your research. We will handle the preparations for the trial. And Daewon? For what it is worth, thank you. Even if this does not work, you have given humanity a better story than cowardice. After they left, Subin stayed. She helped Daewon sort through the remaining recordings, pulling files and organizing data while he watched and memorized. Around 3 in the morning, a young woman named Bo-ra from the communications team brought more coffee and sat quietly in the corner, too nervous to sleep. Are you afraid? Bo-ra asked suddenly. Daewon stopped the videos. He was quiet for a while. Yes. I am very afraid. My hands keep shaking when I think about it too directly. So I try not to think about it. Daewon stopped the videos. So I try not to think about it. Then why? Because someone had to. And because I have something the others do not. What? He gestured at the screens, at the endless library of human knowledge they represented. Grandmother Mei-ri used to say that humanity's greatest weapon was not our strength or our technology. It was our refusal to forget. We write everything down. We study everything. We learn from everyone. A Krathari warrior is born into his role, trained in one perfect style, and never questions it. I am a human who has studied 1,000 imperfect styles, looking for connections. Maybe that is enough. Maybe it is not. But it is what I have. He turned back to the screens. Now please, let me work. I still have 123 fights to review, and the sun comes up in 4 hours. Subin and Bo-ra exchanged glances. Then Subin pulled up the next set of files, and they worked in silence. Outside, the station slowly turned through the darkness. In the Krathari section, War Master Krenzar slept the calm sleep of a warrior who had never known defeat. He dreamed of nothing at all. In the archive room, Daewon watched the patterns repeat across his screens, his tired eyes cataloging every movement, every shift of weight, every tell. His coffee went cold, and he did not notice. His back ached from sitting, and he did not move. There was only the data, the endless flow of information, and the quiet hope that knowledge could be stronger than claws. The combat sphere was exactly as large as the records had shown, but somehow seeing it in person made Daewon's stomach tighten. A massive transparent dome, 100 meters across, with seating for thousands rising in circles around it. The floor was smooth metal, offering no terrain advantages. The walls were force-shielded to protect the audience from any attacks that went wide. It was a perfect cage. Daewon stood in the preparation chamber beneath the arena, wearing simple gray combat clothing that the humans had provided. No armor, no padding. The rules were absolute. He could hear the crowd above, thousands of voices creating a sound like distant thunder. Subin stood with him, checking the fit of his clothing with nervous hands. You should eat something, she said. I tried. I threw it up. He closed his eyes, breathing slowly. In through the nose, hold for 4 counts, out through the mouth. Grandmother Mei-ri's technique for calming the mind. It was not working very well. How much did you sleep? 40 minutes. Maybe. He had finally stopped watching the videos at dawn, his eyes too tired to focus. Then he had spent 2 hours running through the movements in an empty training room. His body clumsy and slow, compared to the perfect techniques in his memory. 2 hours after that, trying not to think about what was coming. You have a plan. If I die today, he continued firmly, tell my grandmother that I remembered everything she taught me. Tell her I was not brave, but I tried. Subin's eyes were wet. You are an idiot. A very smart idiot. But still an idiot. Accurate. He managed a small smile. The door opened. Ambassador Hana entered with G1 and several others from the human delegation. They all looked tense. Behind them came someone unexpected, a Krathari. younger than Velthos, with lighter scales and eyes that showed something other than aggression. Curiosity. Maybe. This is Torvan, Hana said. The Krathari stepped forward. He was still huge compared to Day One, but he carried himself differently than the warriors. Less aggressive, more thoughtful. Human, called Day One. I watched the recordings you accessed. All 200 trials. I was curious what you were looking for. Day One met his eyes. And what do you think I was looking for? Patterns. Weaknesses. You study us like we are a problem to solve, not an enemy to fight. Torvan's head tilted slightly. This is unusual. Most species who face us try to become stronger. You try to become smarter. I do not know if it will work, but I find it interesting. Is there a reason you are telling me this? Yes, Krenzar is a perfect warrior. He has never lost because he does not make mistakes. He follows the forms exactly as they were taught to him, as they were taught to his teachers, as they have been taught for 3,000 years. He is like a machine built for combat. Torvan paused. But machines are predictable. I think you know this. I think this is what you hope for. And you are warning me? Or helping me? Neither. I am simply stating a fact. Another fact. Krenzar is also very, very fast. Knowing what he will do and reacting in time are different things. The young Krathari turned to leave, then stopped. If you survive the first minute, I will be impressed. If you survive 5 minutes, I will be shocked. If you survive 10 minutes, I will believe you might actually have a chance. After he left, G1 let out a breath. Was that supposed to be encouraging? I think it was honest, Day One said. I appreciate honesty right now. A speaker crackled. Combatants to the arena floor. Trial begins in 5 minutes. This was it. Day One felt his heart hammering. His hands were shaking again. He pressed them against his thighs, trying to steady them through pressure alone. Fear was normal. Grandmother Mayri had taught him that. Fear was the body preparing to act. The trick was not to let it overwhelm the mind. Subin hugged him suddenly, hard and quick. He nodded, not trusting his voice. The elevator platform rose, carrying him up through the floor of the arena. Light flooded over him, and the sound of the crowd hit like a physical wave. Thousands of beings from hundreds of species, all gathered to watch the human librarian die. Day One could see them through the transparent dome, Krathari warriors in their section. Human delegation pale and quiet. Others he did not recognize. Across the arena, another platform rose. War Master Krenzar stood on it like a monument to violence. He was even bigger than he had appeared in the videos, muscles visible beneath scales that looked like they had been carved from volcanic rock. His eyes locked onto Day One with complete focus. This was a being who lived for combat, who knew nothing else, who had spent his entire life preparing for moments exactly like this. Day One forced himself to breathe. In. Hold. Out. He was not a warrior. He was a scholar. But maybe that was enough. A holographic display appeared above the arena, showing both fighters and listing the terms of the trial in multiple languages. The crowd quieted. A neutral arbiter, a floating species that looked like animated crystal, spoke with a voice that echoed through the dome. This combat is held under the ancient Right of Blood challenge. Terms have been agreed. No weapons, no armor, no outside interference. Combat continues until death, surrender, or inability to continue. Honor to both who stand in the circle. The platforms lowered them to the arena floor. Day One stepped off carefully, feeling the metal under his feet. It was cool and smooth, offering good traction. Small blessings. He moved to his side of the arena. Krenzar moved to his. The Krathari warrior began a ritual Day One recognized from the videos. A series of movements, stretches, and strikes, warming up the body. Every warrior did this before trials. It was tradition. Day One did not have a tradition. He simply stood and watched, memorizing the way Krenzar moved, confirming what he had seen in the recordings. Same balance, same preferences, same tells. "You are very small," Krenzar said. His voice carried easily across the space. "I will make it quick. Thank you," Daewon said, and meant it. The crystal arbiter rose higher. "Combatants, ready?" Krenzar dropped into a fighting stance that Daewon had seen 200 times. Daewon settled into a loose position, trying to remember how his grandmother had taught him to stand. Weight even, knees soft, hands ready but not tense. "Begin." Krenzar moved. He was fast. Impossibly fast for something so large. The opening technique, the overhead claw strike, came at Daewon like a falling boulder. Daewon's body moved before his mind could freeze. He stepped forward and to the left, not away from the attack, but into the space where Krenzar's balance would commit. The massive claws passed so close to his face that he felt the air move. Then he was inside the Krathari's reach, in the dead zone, where the long arms could not strike effectively. He did not attack. He simply moved away again, circling. The crowd made a sound surprise, maybe. Krenzar turned, studying him now with slightly more interest. The second attack came, a mid-level sweep with the claws extended, meant to gut an opponent. Daewon saw it forming in the warrior's stance and dropped low. The strike passing over him, he rolled away, coming up in a new position. Still no attack, just evasion. Third technique, a charging grab meant to capture and crush. Daewon waited until the last possible moment, then dropped to one knee and pivoted, using a movement borrowed from capoeira. Krenzar's momentum carried him past, his claws closing on empty air. The crowd was louder now. This was not how these fights usually went. The human should have been dead already. 1 minute passed. Torvan, watching from the Krathari section, leaned forward with intense focus. 2 minutes passed. Krenzar changed his approach, using faster combination attacks. But each combination came from the same root techniques, the same fundamental forms. Daewon had seen them all. His body was starting to remember the patterns, moving with less thought and more instinct. He was not good at this. He was clumsy compared to a real martial artist. But he did not need to be good. He just needed to be somewhere else when the attacks arrived. 3 minutes. Ambassador Hana was gripping the railing in the human section so hard her knuckles were white. "He is still alive," she whispered. 4 minutes. Krenzar's attacks were getting slightly faster, slightly more aggressive. He was not used to opponents who lasted this long. But Daewon could see something else. The warrior was still following the forms. Perfect. Precise. Exactly as taught. There was no improvisation. No adaptation. He was trying to solve the problem of Daewon by applying the correct technique harder and faster. 5 minutes. In the Krathari section, Torvan sat back slowly, his expression unreadable. Daewon was breathing hard now, sweat soaking his clothing. His legs burned from the constant movement. But he was still alive. And he was starting to see something else in the patterns. Krenzar had been taught to fight opponents who fought back aggressively, who met force with force. The forms were designed for that. But Daewon was not fighting. He was just refusing to be where the attacks expected him to be. At the 6-minute mark, Daewon started to speak. "Overhead strike variation 4, he said, evading another attack. "Response typically creates opening for rib strike variation 2. Except I am not responding typically." "Oak, 5. Krenzar's eyes widened slightly. "Ground sweep variation 3, Daewon continued, moving. "Pairs well with upward claw variation 7. I have seen this combination 16 times in the trials. It is very effective against opponents who defend." "What are you doing?" Krenzar growled. "Teaching," Daewon said. "Or maybe learning. I am not completely sure yet." 7 minutes. 8. 9. The crowd was completely silent now, watching something unprecedented. The small human who moved like water, always flowing, never resisting, never where the strikes expected to find him. The perfect warrior who was becoming frustrated, applying techniques with increasing aggression but no increase in effectiveness. At 10 minutes, Daewon made his first offensive move. It was not much a quick strike to Krenzar's extended arm, as the warrior overcommitted to a lunge, using the momentum against him. The strike itself was weak, but it landed. First, touch to the human. The Krathari section erupted in shocked noise. Krenzar stepped back, looking at his arm where the human had struck. Not damaged, not even bruised, but touched. He looked at Daewon with something new in his eyes. Respect. And the first hint of uncertainty. The change in Krenzar was subtle but real. For 10 minutes, he had been applying techniques, certain that the correct application would bring the expected result. Now, for the first time in 200 trials, something unexpected had happened. The human had touched him. The human was still alive. Daewon used the moment to catch his breath. His lungs burned, and his legs felt like they were made of wet sand. He was not in good physical condition. Years behind a desk had made sure of that. But his mind was clear. Clearer, actually, than it had been in the preparation room. Fear was still there, but it was distant now, pushed back by focus. "You are not fighting," Krenzar said. It was not quite an accusation, more like confusion. "I am fighting," Daewon replied between breaths. "Just not the way you expect. You are running. Combat is whatever wins." Daewon shifted his stance, preparing for the next exchange. "You were trained that combat has a proper form, a correct way. I was taught that combat is a conversation between styles, and the one who adapts wins." Krenzar's answer was a renewed attack. But there was something different now. A slight hesitation. A fraction of a second, where the warrior evaluated before committing. The perfect machine was starting to think instead of simply execute, and thinking slowed him down. Daewon saw it. The 11th minute became the 12th, then the 13th. He began mixing techniques more freely now, combining movements from different martial arts in ways that should not work together but somehow did. A low stance from Kung Fu flowing into a pivot from Capoeira, transitioning to a joint lock attempt from Aikido that he could not quite complete, but which forced Krenzar to react. Each exchange taught Daewon more. He was starting to feel the rhythms of Krenzar's movement, the tiny gaps between techniques where the warrior had to reset. Those gaps were his only opportunities. In the human section, Subin was explaining to the others what they were watching. Daewon is not trying to win through damage. He cannot. He is trying to win through exhaustion and frustration. Make Krenzar work for every attack. Make him question his training. Make him adapt to something he has never encountered. Ji-won shook his head in disbelief. "It is working! Spirits help me. It is actually working. The Krathari is slowing down." "Barely," Ambassador Hana said. "And Daewon is slowing down more. Look at him. He is exhausted." It was true. At the 15-minute mark, Daewon's movements were getting sloppy. His evasions were wider, less efficient. His breathing was ragged. Krenzar was tired too. His attacks came slightly slower, with slightly less force. But the Krathari was built for endurance. Daewon was built for sitting in libraries. "Spinning strike variation 9, Daewon said, still narrating. Borrowed from ancient Krathari naval combat techniques. Designed for fighting in confined ship corridors. Very effective when opponent is cornered." He was not cornered. He slid past the strike, but his foot slipped slightly. Krenzar's follow-up caught him. A glancing blow to the shoulder that sent Daewon spinning across the floor. He rolled with it, coming up in a crouch, but pain shot through his shoulder. Not broken, but hurt. The crowd reacted. First blood, sort of. The human was injured. Krenzar advanced, sensing weakness. "You are clever, human. But clever is not enough. Your body fails you. Day One stood slowly, favoring his shoulder. You are right. I am not strong enough. Not fast enough. Not tough enough. He shifted his stance, protecting the injury. But I know 3,000 years of your history. Every technique, every form, every combat philosophy your people developed. And I know something else. What? You have perfected war. But perfection is a cage. Day One moved forward. And for the first time, he attacked first. A series of rapid strikes borrowed from Wing Chun, all aimed at the gaps in Krenzar's guard. None of them powerful, but forcing the warrior to defend instead of attack. Krenzar blocked them easily, but he had to move out of his preferred stance to do it. His counterattack came a half-second late, and Day One was already gone, circling to a new position. Every attack you make I have seen before, Day One said. In the trials. Recording 17, 23, 45, 89. The same techniques, executed the same way. You were taught perfectly. Then predict this. Krenzar abandoned formal technique entirely. He charged like an animal, pure rage and strength, claws out and teeth bared. It was the berserker rush. The fallback, when technique failed. Day One had seen it once in the recordings. A desperate move by a warrior who was cornered. He did not run. Instead, he rooted himself using a deep stance from Taekyon. Weight low and centered. As Krenzar crashed into him like a falling mountain, Day One twisted, grabbed, and redirected. It was a judo throw, called Tomoe Nage, using the opponent's momentum against them. Day One's shoulder screamed in pain as he executed the move, but physics did not care about pain. Krenzar flew over him and crashed into the arena floor, skidding several meters. The entire combat sphere went silent. The mighty War Master, undefeated in 200 trials, lay on his back, stunned. Day One collapsed to one knee, gasping, his shoulder throbbing. That throw had cost him nearly everything he had left. But Krenzar was down. Slowly, the Krathari warrior rolled over and pushed himself up. His scales had scratched marks from the impact. No blood, but damage. Visible damage. He looked at Day One with an expression that was hard to read. Impossible, he said quietly. Physics, Day One wheezed. Bigger they are, harder they fall. Humans did not invent that saying. But we understand it. Krenzar took a combat stance again, but something fundamental had changed. The absolute confidence was gone. He was looking at Day One the way he might look at a puzzle he could not solve. 20 minutes had passed. Both fighters were exhausted, but Day One could see victory now. A thin possibility. Not through strength, through persistence, through making every exchange cost more than it gained. He stood on shaking legs. You know what the difference is between your training and mine? He asked. You were taught one perfect style. I studied 1,000 imperfect ones. You know the best way to do everything. I know 100 different ways to do anything. Words, Krenzar said, but there was uncertainty in his voice. Not words, philosophy. Day One moved forward despite his exhaustion. Your culture made you into the perfect weapon. My culture made me into a student. A weapon can be mastered, but a student never stops learning. Even now, right here, I am learning from you. They exchanged blows again. Slower now, both of them conserving energy. But Day One was adapting, adjusting his responses based on everything he had seen in the last 20 minutes. Real combat data, not just recordings. Each exchange taught him more about this specific warrior, his preferences, his tells, his rhythms. And Krenzar was not adapting. Could not adapt. His training was too perfect, too rigid. He could execute techniques flawlessly, but he could not invent new ones. At the 25-minute mark, Day One landed his second significant strike. A palm strike to Krenzar's throat, aimed at the gap between scales that he had identified in the recordings. The warrior's armor was nearly perfect, but biology demanded certain flexible points. The throat was one. Krenzar staggered back, coughing. Not seriously hurt, but hurt. Real damage. In the Krathari section, Velthos Ironscale was leaning forward, his claws gripping the railing. Beside him, Torvan spoke quietly. The human is winning. Commander, that is not possible. And yet, Torvan gestured at the arena. Krenzar follows the forms perfectly. But the human has no forms. He is water, taking the shape of whatever container he is poured into. How do you fight water with a sword? The fight continued. 30 minutes. 35. The crowd was completely absorbed now, watching something that had never happened before. A human librarian, fighting one of the galaxy's greatest warriors to a standstill through nothing but knowledge and adaptation. Day One's vision was getting blurry from exhaustion. His shoulder was on fire. His legs wanted to collapse. But he kept moving, kept evading, kept landing small strikes that accumulated into real damage. Death by 1,000 cuts, except the cuts were knowledge applied with precision. At the 40-minute mark, something broke in Krenzar. Not physically, mentally. The warrior stopped mid-attack and stepped back, breathing hard, staring at Day One with an expression of complete confusion. "What are you?" he asked. Day One nearly laughed. But he was too tired. "I told you. A librarian. Someone who reads and remembers. Your people spent 3,000 years perfecting combat. My people spent that long writing down everything we learned from everyone we met. Different paths." Krenzar looked at his claws, then at the human who should have died in the first minute. "I do not understand how you are still alive." "Neither do I, honestly." Day One swayed slightly, catching himself. "What advantage? I can surrender when I am beaten, and learn from the experience. Can you?" The question hung in the air. Krenzar stared at him, and for the first time in 200 trials, the perfect warrior had no answer. Then, slowly, Krenzar straightened. He lowered his claws, and he spoke words that no one in that arena had ever expected to hear. "Teach me." The combat sphere remained silent for several long seconds. Those two words from Krenzar, "teach me," echoed through the space like a bell that could not be unrung. In 3,000 years of trials, no Krathari warrior had ever asked an opponent to teach them anything. The very concept went against everything their culture stood for. Day One stood there, swaying slightly, trying to process what he had just heard. His exhausted brain struggled to catch up. "What?" he asked. Krenzar took a step forward, and Day One instinctively tensed. But the warrior's posture was different now. Less aggressive, almost respectful. "You have shown me something impossible. You should be dead. But you are not. I have applied every technique I know, and you counter them with things I have never seen. This should not be possible. But it is." He looked at his claws again. "Kringtanter. Possible. Kringtanter. I have trained my entire life to be perfect. But you show me that perfection is not enough. So I ask, teach me how you do this." Day One's legs chose that moment to give out. He sat down hard on the arena floor, his shoulders screaming in protest. "I need," he said between gasps, "to not die first. Can we pause this trial?" The crystal arbiter floated down, its voice uncertain. "This is unprecedented. The trial continues until—" "I yield," Krenzar said suddenly. The crowd erupted into chaos. "The human has bested me. Not through strength, but through knowledge. He has shown me that my training is incomplete. I yield this trial and accept the loss." The arbiter's crystalline body flickered with confusion. "You are uninjured. You can continue fighting. This is not—" "I yield," Krenzar repeated firmly. "The trial is complete. Humanity wins the dispute." In the Krathari section, the chaos was immediate. Warriors were standing, shouting, some in anger, some in disbelief. Velthos Ironscale's face was unreadable. In the human section, Ambassador Hana was gripping Subin's arm so hard it would leave bruises, tears streaming down her face. G1 was laughing in shock, unable to believe what he had just witnessed. Medical teams rushed into the arena. The human medics reached Day 1 first, checking his shoulder, his vitals, shining lights in his eyes, while he tried to wave them away. "I am fine," he mumbled. "Just tired. And my shoulder is probably dislocated. But otherwise, fine." Subin pushed through the medics and grabbed his good shoulder. "You absolute idiot. You magnificent, insane, impossible idiot." She was crying and laughing at the same time. "Did I win?" Day 1 asked, his thoughts still fuzzy. "You won. You actually won." She hugged him carefully, avoiding the injured shoulder. "You just beat the unbeatable." I did not beat him. I confused him. There is a difference." Krenzar approached, and the human medics stepped back nervously. The massive warrior knelt down to be closer to Day 1's level. Human called Day 1. "You said you studied our trials. All of them? 200 fights. Every recording available. And you remembered all of this? Every technique? Every movement?" "That is what I do." "I remember." Day 1 winced as a medic worked on his shoulder. "I am not a fighter. I am a scholar. I study patterns. Your people created a perfect martial art. But perfect systems are closed systems. They do not adapt. Humans create messy systems that are always learning, always changing. Different approaches." Krenzar was quiet for a moment. "I have won 200 trials. I have never learned anything from them. You fought one trial and taught me that everything I know might be incomplete. This is troubling. But also interesting. If it helps," Day 1 said. "I find your martial art beautiful. The efficiency, the precision, the philosophical completeness. It is genuinely impressive. It is just also predictable." Which is a different issue. The warrior made a sound that might have been a laugh. "You compliment me while explaining my weakness. You are a strange human." The Galactic Assembly reconvened 3 days later. The time was needed for several reasons. First, to allow Day 1's shoulder to heal. It had indeed been dislocated, along with several pulled muscles and general exhaustion. Second, to allow the various species to process what had happened. And third, to allow the Krothari delegation to have numerous, very loud arguments with each other about what it all meant. When the assembly finally gathered, the atmosphere was completely different from the first session. Day 1 sat in the human delegation section, his arm in a sling, looking uncomfortable with all the attention. Beings from dozens of species kept staring at him, some with respect, some with curiosity, some with barely concealed hostility. Velthos Ironscale stood at the Krothari position. His expression was controlled, but there was something different in his bearing. "The Krothari Empire accepts the outcome of the trial," he announced. "The disputed Theta Corridor will be shared territory, with navigation rights and resource claims, divided according to the original human proposal." Number 2. Quote, a murmur ran through the assembly. This was more than just accepting defeat. It was actual compromise. Furthermore, Velthos continued, the Krothari Empire wishes to propose a cultural exchange program with humanity. We wish to study your martial arts, your combat philosophies, and your methods of knowledge preservation. In exchange, we offer access to our training facilities and combat instructors. Ambassador Hana stood carefully, hiding her shock. The human delegation accepts this proposal and looks forward to beneficial cultural exchange between our peoples. But the Krothari commander was not finished. War Master Krenzar has resigned from active combat service. He has requested permission to study with human martial artists and scholars. This is unprecedented in our history, but I have granted his request. The assembly erupted into discussion. G1 leaned over to Day 1. Do you understand what you have done? You have not just won a single trial. You have changed their entire culture's perspective on combat. I just wanted to not die, Day One said quietly. Everything else was improvisation. Over the following weeks, things moved very quickly. The cultural exchange program was formalized. Bo Ra from the communications team was promoted to help coordinate it, thrilled to be part of something historical. Subin was given a much larger budget for the archive and tasked with creating a new division focused on comparative martial studies. Krenzar arrived on Earth 6 weeks after the trial. Day One met him at the spaceport, his arm still in a sling, though it was healing well. The massive warrior looked strange among humans, towering over everyone, his scales drawing stares. "Welcome to Earth," Day One said. "Thank you for agreeing to teach me." Krenzar looked around at the city. "Your world is very different from what I expected. Smaller buildings. More organic. We like nature. Come. I will show you the Grand Archive first. Then we can begin your lessons." As they walked, Krenzar asked, "What will you teach me first?" "That is the wrong question." Day One smiled slightly. "First, I teach you how to learn, how to see patterns, how to question what you know. The fighting techniques come after. My grandmother always said that the hardest thing to teach a master is that they are still a student." They reached the Grand Archive, a massive building that stored humanity's collective knowledge in both digital and physical forms. Krenzar stared up at it, his expression thoughtful. "In the arena, you spoke of 1,000 imperfect styles," the warrior said. "You said humans study everything, learn from everyone. This building represents that philosophy? This building and 100 others like it across Earth. And thousands more, archives on our colony worlds. We write everything down. We forget nothing. We learn from everyone." Daiwan gestured at the entrance. "Your people perfected war. Mine perfected remembering. Maybe together, we can perfect something better." Inside, they found a surprise waiting. A training room had been prepared, but it was not empty. A dozen humans stood there. Martial artists from different disciplines, historians, even some soldiers, and standing with them were 3 young Krathari, their scales lighter than Krenzar's, their eyes bright with curiosity. "Students," Subin explained, joining them. "From both species. We thought it would be more interesting to learn together." Day One looked at the mixed group and felt something unexpected. Hope. Real hope that this might work. "All right," he said, stepping to the front of the room despite his sling. "Welcome, everyone. First lesson. Everything you know about combat is both correct and incomplete. Every martial art is a philosophy expressed through movement. And every philosophy has blind spots. Our job is to find those blind spots, learn from them, and create something new together." One of the human students raised a hand. "Teacher Day One, what style will we learn?" "None of them. All of them. Something that does not exist yet." He smiled. "That is the point. We are not here to preserve the past. We are here to build the future." The lessons began. At first, there was awkwardness. The Krathari were used to rigid discipline and precise forms. The humans were used to more flexible, experimental approaches. But slowly, over days and weeks, something remarkable happened. They started learning from each other. A Krathari student would demonstrate a blocking technique, and a human would suggest a slight variation that worked better for a different body type. A human would show a throw, and a Krathari would point out how to make it more efficient. Knowledge flowed both ways. 6 months after the trial, Day One received a message from Ambassador Hana. The Galactic Assembly had seen a 40% decrease in trial by combat requests. Several other species had approached humanity asking about establishing similar knowledge exchange programs. The galaxy was not suddenly peaceful, but it was asking different questions. Day One showed the message to Krenzar during their afternoon training session. The warrior had learned fast, adapting human techniques to his Krathari physiology. creating hybrid forms that were genuinely new. Do you regret it? Day One asked. Giving up combat service? You were undefeated. Krenzar executed a combination strike that blended Krathari precision with human adaptability. I was undefeated because I fought the same fights, the same way. Now I am learning to see every fight as new, every opponent as a teacher. Which victory is more valuable? That is a very human way to think. Perhaps, or perhaps it is simply a better way to think. The warrior paused, then asked, "What will you do now? You are famous across the galaxy." Many opportunities. Day One looked around the training room. At the students practicing together, at the library visible through the windows. I will do what I have always done. Read, study, teach, and learn. That is enough for me. The human who defeated the undefeatable warrior wants only to teach? I did not defeat you. I showed you that there was more to learn. Those are different things. Someone has to document all of this. In 1,000 years, other species will study what we are doing here. They will learn from our experiment. That is how knowledge works. We build on what came before, adding our small piece to the infinite puzzle. 1 year after the trial, the Galactic Martial Archive officially opened on Meridian Prime. It was a massive facility, combining library, training center, and cultural exchange hub. Representatives from 40 species attended the opening ceremony. Day One gave a short speech, uncomfortable with public speaking, but doing his duty. My grandmother Mayri taught me that the greatest warrior is not the one who never loses, he said to the assembled crowd. It is the one who teaches others how to win, not through making them copies of yourself, but by helping them find their own path. We open this archive in that spirit. Come, learn, teach, share, build something new together. As the ceremony ended and crowds filled the archive's halls, Day One found a quiet corner with a cup of tea. Subin found him there, shaking her head with amusement. You change the galaxy and you hide in a corner with tea. The galaxy is very loud. Tea is very quiet. I prefer quiet. You are impossible. Accurate. He sipped his tea, watching through the window as beings from across the galaxy entered the archive together. Krathari warriors, studying alongside human scholars. Former enemies sharing techniques. Knowledge flowing freely. Subin, do you think we actually made things better? Bin. She considered the question seriously. Maybe. Maybe not. But we gave them an option they did not have before. Fight, or learn together. Some will still choose fighting, but some will choose this instead. That is something. Day One nodded slowly. His shoulder ached slightly, a permanent reminder of the arena. But it was a good ache, the kind that came from doing something difficult and surviving it. In another section of the archive, Krenzar was teaching a class on Krathari combat philosophy to a mixed group of students. His approach was different now, more questioning, more willing to explore alternatives. The perfect warrior had become a student again, and somewhere on Earth, in a small house maintained by archivists, there was a photo of an old woman named Mayri, who had taught her grandson that knowledge was stronger than strength, that learning was more valuable than winning, and that the greatest battles were won not with fists, but with open minds. Day One raised his teacup slightly, a private toast to memories and possibilities. The galaxy kept turning. And somewhere in its infinite complexity, beings were choosing to teach instead of fight, to learn instead of conquer, to build bridges instead of walls. It was enough.